Well, I mean, we engaged in multidimensional poverty measurement about 3 years ago, I think, or 4 years ago, 2010, about. And we have found it useful. What is very interesting is that our poverty line, the $1.25, corresponds with what is multidimensionally a third of the population, a third deprivation of households. But what we do not know yet is whether it's the same people. So at the level of the macro level, these numbers actually make a lot of sense. But beyond that, I mean, human life is about multidimensionality. It's not unidimensional, it's multidimensional, and therefore have to be understood in a particular context. And usually these deprivations move as a cluster. And one needs to know what are the levels of deprivations, because when you start addressing them, they may be many, but there is an issue around sequencing them. For instance, if you provide social grants to deal with multidimensionality, you could be dealing with food deprivation, but you may use your financial instruments amongst the poor to generate and create markets for investment. So how you sequence that is very, very important. And to sequence it, you have to understand the multidimensional manifestation of poverty, and you need to know what to start with and how you sequence and what effects and so on. So multidimensional understanding of human condition is a very crucial approach to solving real problems of the world. So at the moment, if you look at South Africa, the key drivers of poverty at the moment are unemployment. And it's related to education because there are no skills. The skill level of people is poor as a consequence of years of discrimination. So when you deal with the poor, you have to look at education. But in that education environment, there are also conditions in the household that are very, very challenging. So while access to resources such as water, sanitation, and so on, and housing actually have reached a level that people have actually are no longer deprived of that. But employment is a big one. I think the attacking sustainable development goals from a multidimensional poverty perspective and leaving no one behind provides an opportunity to ask ourselves, how did we reach this point? I mean, this thing didn't just happen overnight and then suddenly we say we need SDGs. I think the key question that ourselves as society have to ask is, how did we get to this point where we are actually realizing that we belong, whether poor or rich, we actually one human species. We are only one single, same species, is the human species. And I think by looking at multidimensionality, we can understand how we reached this point and probably provide solutions. It's not a matter of just providing for incomes, it's a matter of providing for a whole range of things. And this is important in the case of South Africa. We have to understand the racial composition and the politics of discrimination and so on to know how to get there. And probably at the global level, we have to understand slave trade, racism, discrimination, including in the US, and finding many African populations here in Latin America and so on. So multidimensionality in its forms actually isolates probably in very, very interesting ways and looking at society at its microscopic level, understanding the history, entire history, and how we created the conditions that we find ourselves in, and hopefully in the rain will find answers of how we move. So multidimensionality is a very powerful tool that deals with where we are now. And I think the SDGs are well poised to to look at multidimensionality. Of course, the SDGs now, they say, well, why don't you look at 2 indicators per goal? I'm saying, now that's numerology. It's really fooling with statistics. Life is so complex, we cannot say how many should you do to understand. If the problem is there, you have to understand it in its fullest form. Yeah. So it will take as many as is necessary to understand that phenomenon and move away from there. I think, we have just concluded from Africa. I was hosting our fellow African statisticians where we are looking at these indicators and where we said we'll, as Africa, adopt a multi-dimensional approach to measurement. Because the goals, if you look at goal 1 to 8 and goal 10 on inequality, all those are very, very neatly connected indicators about individuals, about their living conditions, about their health, about what they eat and hunger and so on, about their own social rights. So this network demonstrates how a multidimensional approach brings deeper understanding to the social and economic and political challenges that society has and how that should be resolved. So the network, like Colombia is a country here, China, South Africa, and other countries, particularly Latin American countries, coming to the fore with a very Mexico, bringing a wealth of information, I mean, China started its program 35 years ago, and everybody's talking about the National Development Plan. I mean, when we had the Washington Consensus, World Bank and IMF solutions and prescriptions, everybody's saying, well, why did you accept those prescriptions in the 80s? And solutions such as in China 35 years ago are about what is the central thrust of the problems that we are resolving, and how do we resolve them, and how do we stay the course. So this network is suggestive and demonstrates the value of staying the course. Well, I mean, the problem is the south-south one, although now it's migrated to the north, to Europe. I think poverty, in my saying, is that sorghum is the daughter-in-law of all families, meaning that anything that happens to one has the potential to happen to everyone else. So watch those things that are tricky, because they will visit you. And I think as we enter this 21st century, we find that no one escapes the challenges. So the South-South cooperation is very important, because that's where the biggest burden of the problem is. But the North is also susceptible to this, especially when we start looking at the environment. That's why the Sustainable Development Goals bind everybody, unlike the MDGs, which we are looking at the South. In terms of South-South cooperation, I mean, the Chinese experience is a very interesting one and instructive one over a long period of time, 35 years. Here in Colombia, how in part problems of poverty are resolved, but also in part looking at an out-of-conflict situation, how to apply multi-dimension to measurement of poverty and strife. Well, that is very useful for Africa, because many of our countries are in that kind of strife, and we need to understand how do we deal with strife-stricken situations, especially, obviously, in Africa.